what makes me afraid, I think it's of could there be an AI that really goes rogue because the AI does things on its own without any human intervention control. I think that I'm afraid of. Oh, and by the way, also, of course, AI in the hands of the wrong people. And looking at the world, there are too many people who are bad actors. And of course, they all have AI, from kind of Russian interference and bot trolls to many, many others who use AI not for the better of the world or just to provide their own services, but for negative action and destructive action. And that definitely worries me.
We went from, I think 2 years ago, a pretty sure market, right? Like I kind of know what's about to happen in my business. And now I don't think any of us do. I'm a bad podcast host. I should have started recording the second that you got on the call, because you said something that was so impactful, which is like, yeah, this is the thing that's keeping us up all at night, right? Like this is the thing that we went from, I think 2 years ago, a pretty sure market, right? Like everything's going well, like the world is what it is, but like I kind of know what's about to happen in my business. And now I don't think any of us do, right? I don't think any of us say, oh, 2 years from now, Castos will be what it is, or SaaS.group will be what it is. But we don't know what that's going to be, right?
Yeah, very true. When I started with SaaS, I was like, this is like real estate. You buy a building and you collect rent, and not so sure anymore.
Yeah. I heard Andrew Wilkinson say on My First Million podcast that SaaS, or software in general, I think he might have been saying, is not as good of a business as it used to be because of AI. And I hear all these people on Twitter saying, oh, I'm just going to go build, this application in a weekend with Replit or Cursor, which I don't buy, right? Running a SaaS business, no. I know it's way more complicated than that. But do you think SaaS is as good of a business now as it was 2 years ago?
Oh, I actually think it is, because I think it's the foundation for everything. You still need everything. I mean, SaaS is still a lot about getting certain processes digital, having all the data in one place, having proper processes for things. And those are the things you build AI on top. So yes, it is a threat, but it's also a huge opportunity.
In what way do you see it as an opportunity?
Well, it's an opportunity because you need data first, and you need proper systems before you can replace human work with agent work. And SaaS is the first step. So, I could name any example of our brands, for example, but I'll take one, because they've among our 25 brands, they're pretty much ahead in AI stuff. It's a brand called Zenloop. And Zenloop collects customer feedback from e-commerce shops and so on and so forth. And the first step is collecting feedback. And the second thing is then analyzing it with AI and making sure the right conclusions are taken. If you don't analyze the feedback and putting feedback analysis into your processes, which is a skill in itself, then you're not going to get to any of the AI part. And I think the same applies for every single business we have.
Yeah. Is that kind of the path through which you are guiding your kind of portfolio companies and leadership there to think about AI adoption, right? It's not just like a ChatGPT box in your application anymore. Like it's a little more natively integrated. Is that kind of the path you're asking folks to take?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there are certain levels, and all of those has, like, the whole thing has pretty profound implications to consider in system design and architecture and development processes. So a couple examples. So one is, I think SaaS will transition from those monolithic feature-rich platforms with a lot of UX to nimble, much more API-driven data providers. So, for example, one of the things is really, become API-based first. And then, once you have that, you integrate your APIs also directly with the AI stars, the new kids on the block. And so that alone is a shift away from being purely human-centric on SaaS traditionally being very much, UX, UI is super important. That's, I think, going to go down in importance, to name one example.
I'm trying to kind of real-time process what you're saying and apply it to our business. So Castos, we're a podcast hosting platform. We think UI is like quite important. We get a lot of folks saying like, gosh, it's such a great application. It's so easy to use. It's so beautiful. It's so intuitive. I think the thing that we ask customers to do is complicated, right? Doing a podcast is hard.
Yeah.
We're recording this, you edit, you publish, you grow your audience, all this kind of stuff. We're just one small piece in that. And I think what I'm hearing you say is that the way we should think about it is how can we make ourselves and the data of our customers available to more places? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, that is one element. Of course, it depends a lot on what type of business. I would say podcasting. Yeah. That's also why I'm actually quite bullish on podcasting. Is an inherently human thing. Yes, we can use AI avatars, but I think there even in 5 years, 10 years down the road, it's going to be somewhat artificial. So I think there's going to be this human connections of two humans talking, whether it's like what we're doing at the moment, virtual, or it's in person. I think that part will remain, maybe even become more important. And then UX will be super important, continue to be super important. So I really kind of agree with what you said. I was thinking a lot, like when I thought about this, I was thinking our business is like our scraper API SaaS product. It's a scraping platform, or the user feedback thing, which is Zenloop. There, it's a lot more about data collection, data analysis, and there I think the UX will become a lot less important. But it really does depend.
No, that's healthy. I saw a thing for this new CRM, Day.ai, DAY. And it's doing what you're saying. It's taking all of the shit and the million pages that you have in HubSpot and just abstracting the data to say, here's the view of the customer in kind of one place. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's the next iteration of a CRM, is like using AI to better understand the whole picture of the customer and present it to you in a kind of human way, not segregated by tiles and screens and fields and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
To kind of go one step or maybe a couple of steps up, I was having a conversation with a friend last week and kind of took what could be the progression of AI to like its end, right? Of like, we're in this panacea, nobody's really working anymore. We're all just going to go get farms out in the country and raise chickens, right? Because what they were saying is like, if all, and I'm air quoting for those of you just listening, you should be on YouTube because it's better. But if you're not, if all of the knowledge workers are replaced by AI, or even, heck, if even 20% of the knowledge working workforce is gone, the world is going to be a really different place. Companies like Google, laying off 20 or 30% of their workforce would have a profound impact on kind of the global economy. Do you see that happening, or will it be, hey, we just have a better shovel now, everybody elevates their capacity within the company to meaningfully contribute?
I would say the latter. Of course, as every shift, whether it's the invention of the steam machine or the internet around late 90s, I mean, that's at least when it hit mainstream, all the way going into 2000, 2005, when a lot of those shifts happened as well. We've not seen mass unemployment. You could say the same thing. I mean, when I was a student, I went to the university library, and there was a librarian giving me those books I wanted, and all those people, I mean, they're all out of the job. And in information knowledge, the transformation in the last 20 years was profound. And yet, like, I think we're at record employment in most countries these days, scrambling for qualified workers. And I think AI is going to be no different, because also the demand will increase. I mean, if you think about think of something like reporting, accounting. We're all predicting, because accounting is very repetitive. That's one of the jobs. I think it's you have those lists of AI risk to certain job types, and I think accountants are very, very, very much on top of this list. And that makes sense, because analyzing certain receipts and slips and put them into the right buckets is a task AI can already do. But also the amount of or the granularity of accounting work has massively increased in the last 20 years. If I think about how I originated the business compared to reporting needs now, and also having virtual credit cards with probably 10x the amount of individual items compared to 20 years ago when I started my first business. And I think the same is happening with AI. I think it just raises the bar for everyone. Everybody is just going to do so many more things, and at the end of the world, this rebound effect of work will be the same with AI.
It's interesting because I find it really intimidating, to be honest. You know, I say, like, if I already think I'm operating at a pretty high level, relative, you know, because I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but if AI is going to ask me to be 50% better than I am now, that's intimidating to me. And I'm kind of like, gosh, like what am I going to do? How am I going to do that? Do you think it's going to be obvious and challenging like that? Or is it going to be a gradual thing where I just stop doing this thing and I pick up this other skill over here, and it happens organically over a few years?
Yeah, I think that's what it is, and I think it's already happening. What we always say to our teams as well is kind of level one of AI is really AI usage. Just become a user yourself, because that's the first thing, and then you experience things, and before you put things into your own product, you become a user, and just like that, I mean, we're all a user of ChatGPT probably, and but I'm just like you, probably every day discovering some new AI tool and try them out, and most of them, frankly, are bullshit. But then I don't know, once every week or so, I discover something really cool. I was like, okay, it's gonna take out this work task.
Yeah.
But again, I think that also it makes me so much better, but it also elevates the work. I'll give you a practical example for this. So I think about a couple of weeks ago, I discovered a note-taking tool called Jamie. And Jamie, I've tried tons of note-taking tools. I think I've tried dozens of note-taking tools, and that one was like wow, this actually it writes really perfect notes. It uses the right acronyms, the right context. Everything was pretty perfect. It's multilingual because I'm mixing between German, which is my mother tongue, and English quite a bit, and so. But it worked with all of that, and I was actually so happy that I contacted the founder and eventually did an angel investment. So for full disclosure here, and since then I'm using this meeting tool with every meeting, and it runs in the background really nicely. But it's the first time I write meeting notes. Before that, my meeting notes, I was actually quite bad in meeting notes, maybe just a sentence or two or something. And now I have real meeting notes. I glance over them real quickly. Do I do less work? Absolutely. Like I do more work, much more work, but it's not that it saves me real time. It just has elevated what is actually needed. And I think that's what's happening everywhere, because everybody now does proper meeting notes where before those tools, they just didn't happen. And I'm not saying that that's always better, because there's suddenly so much more information, but I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing everywhere.
Yeah. You said something I want to drill in on, which is you know, everyone in your companies is using AI. Have you had employees who are resistant to adopting technology? You might, you know, kind of be like too high level to see that, but
that's a great question. I mean, I don't think, because generally SaaS.group is very technology friendly. It's remote first. It's we have a very, very positive company culture, but I could see people seeing deep in their heart, well, you know, once I've done this, I'm going to be the first casualty. I think that's going to be a problem in companies, for example, that are stagnant or shrinking. The good thing is in our case, also because we acquire new companies and generally we're growing, and whenever the pie is growing, people don't worry about those things that much. But I can very much see that in stagnant companies where it's a lot about more like, oh, you know, they're cutting costs and now they're using AI to cut costs. Absolutely. I think that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. So we've seen, I'll say, hesitation and skepticism on several fronts. And I think most of it is well spirited. It's like, hey, this you said, a lot of these SaaS tools are bullshit. I think it's like, hey, Cursor makes more mistakes than is good, right? So like, I just don't use a native AI development tool, or hey, we don't want to replace our support docs with a chatbot because the chatbot, like the AI chatbot, replies wrong a lot of the times. So yeah, I mean, just transparently, and as a founder, like it's been something to negotiate for me. Is like, okay, I'm leaning very heavily into AI. I know it's not perfect, and I kind of take it with a grain of salt a lot of times. But kind of asking the team to do the same thing has not been a straight line, I guess.
And how much do you think of that is resistance versus not being generally as open for new things? As entrepreneur, you're also probably above average in openness for new things in general. It's like, what would you say?
I think it's probably a pretty even mix of both. I think it's people being concerned for their jobs, because I think it's a very valid concern in some cases, right? Like if a $80 a month SaaS tool can do the job of a person, like that's what it is. I think the other one, which I mentioned, is like, it's just not as good as people. I think the best thing is like, it's a tool, right? It's a tool to make me a better founder. Claude is just a better tool to make me write better, or more at least. And I think that when we position it like that, it's good. It's like, hey, this is going to help you do more, and you can go do more meaningful stuff. It's adopted well.
I've heard that.
So I guess it's those three things.
I've heard that quote of that it's not the question whether your job will be disrupted by AI. It's the job, the people who adopt AI will prevail, and the other ones will get disrupted, because the benchmark will go up for everyone. And like with the meeting notes, it's not the question whether you'll get disrupted by it, but it will be expected of everyone to have really proper meeting notes, which 10 years ago or even 2 years ago, maybe the CEOs had because they had an assistant sitting next to them, but everyone else just didn't have. Now we're going to expect meeting notes from everyone. And for that, you need AI. Otherwise, you're just not going to do it. But I think people will eventually pick up on this notion, just like they've picked up on using Google to research, or using online tools to get other jobs done pre-AI.
I agree. I think like you mentioned, it's bringing out the adaptability in most of us. I think because it is touching a pretty core emotional point. I want to ask, like, what are you most excited about, and what are you most fearful of when it comes to AI, either at work or personally, kind of for society?
I mean, in terms of excitement, it's definitely this aha effect of trying things and work that before took hours or days even. Things like writing research papers now with ChatGPT Research as an example. Research when SaaS.group, when we look at a new company to acquire, we're basically, hey, do research on this company. We have a good prompt for that, to also give some more guidance to the research bot. And it's amazing. The stuff that comes out usually has taken an intern a week. But also, again, it means that we do a lot more of this research. Before that, we did a lot less, but it's just amazing. Or I have a tool now that pre-writes my emails. And yes, I need to look over them, but I have a probably 70 to 80% time saved in email response.
Is it Flight?
I'm using Fixer in this case.
That's what, yeah. FYXER, right?
Pretty amazing tool. And so it's really this wow effect of massive effectiveness of things. What makes me afraid, I think it's as long as AI stays the way it is, it's I don't think there's that much to be afraid of. It's really that question, but it's something which is hard to me for grasp, because I'm not an AI expert. I'm good as a user. I can judge on where are certain developments at the moment and how can I put them into my companies and brands so that they actually provide something meaningful. But I'm not someone who could think, okay, where's AI? It could be 10 years down the road. So the kind of what I want to get to is the question of the super intelligence of could there be an AI that really goes rogue because the AI does things on its own without any human intervention control. I think that I'm afraid of. Oh, and by the way, also, of course, as every technology, as we've seen with social media as well, AI in the hands of the wrong people. And looking at the world, there are too many people who are bad actors. And of course, they all have AI, from kind of Russian interference and bot trolls to many, many others who use AI not for the better of the world or just to provide their own services, but for negative action and destructive action. And that definitely worries me.
I agree. I am most hopeful, I think, that it levels the playing field. I think the one thing with AI that I don't hear talked about a lot is folks who are not native English speakers or don't have access to technology as much as those of us in kind of first world countries. For $20 a month, which is a lot in some places, but for $20 a month, they're level set with you and me with a ChatGPT Plus account, which opens a ton of doors, and I think that could be really transformative. I think the thing I'm scared about is kind of the unknown unknowns, right? Like the things we don't see yet. Like I talked about with if 20% of the workforce gets laid off, which I think is actually really possible. Like we're talking about a really fundamental shift in the economy. I think that's as likely as not right now. I consider myself very lucky with our business, I think, being relatively AI resistant. We're not a content marketing agency. We're not, one of these things that is just getting decimated by the next OpenAI release. And in that respect, I sleep pretty well at night, but I definitely think about this stuff a lot. Kind of like looking at SaaS.group and the companies that you invest in and acquire. Obviously, growth rate and margin and churn and all the obvious stuff, right? And the P&L and the balance sheet. What is it about when you say yes to a company? What is it about that company besides the obvious that really makes them a winner in your eyes?
It is almost all the obvious stuff. I mean, there's always, of course, a component of gut feeling, which is hard to put into numbers or something. But the feeling is that a market which is a winning market, and AI plays a big role there. Is AI potentially harmful to a business, or can AI actually be turbocharging a business? Absolutely, that is a factor. It's never this one thing. It's always a whole set of things, from the team to the product to customer views, reviews, of course, all the revenue metrics, the ones you all named, all of those. But then also, of course, that is all linked to the price, because sometimes we have businesses that are flat, profitable but flat, not a lot of dynamic growth or anything, but they could still be good purchases because that's reflected in the price. And we have other hyper growth businesses where we pay more for. So it's all, at the end of the day, it's always those things are.
It's a trade-off, right?
A trade-off, yeah.
Just from a personal perspective, I think, we're 8 years into Castos, and this is like that time, right? Like they talk about the 7-year itch with marriage, right? At 7 years, you're like, nah, I kind of have gone through that, and I'm on the other side now. But one thing I really worry about is this is a pretty successful business, we're doing good, we're fine, we have, positive cash flow, we're growing. I don't know if I could do this again. I heard you on John Warlow's show saying you don't know that you would go from 0 to 1 again. How risky do you really think that is, and how much is it that you've just kind of found a better way? Like, how much is it like you don't know if you could actually do it, or you just don't want to because buying and growing is easier?
I don't know if it's easier. I think there's this term. I mean, we all know the term of the product market fit, but there's also the term of a founder market fit or founder product fit. And I think I, for myself, have found this founder market fit. I like buying companies. I like scaling them. But there are other people whom I have deep respect for who can get something done out of nothing in this early phase. And I think one isn't better than the other one. I think it's just important that you find your own founder product fit. And so I think a lot of founders we talk to who ultimately also end up selling to SaaS.group, they're after the 7-year mark and they're like, okay, maybe I'm tired of doing always the same thing, and I want to get to something new. And that might be a new business, but it also might not be another business, because most exits of bootstrap companies, they give people enough financial freedom to also pursue a completely different career. Which sometimes is more fun because it's new, and you don't have to repeat the same. But also we see other founders who are repeat 0 to 1 entrepreneurs, and they saw. So, for example, the founders of usersnap.com is one of our brands. It's a product and UX research SaaS, and they Usersnap was the third company they built and sold, and now they're building the fourth. So they went right into the next thing, and that's just their mode of operating. And that's kind of cool too, but it doesn't have to be that way. We've seen great people doing something completely different and being successful in what they do, which is something completely different.
Yeah. If you, and I'll answer too, I guess, but if I said, okay, Tim, SaaS.group doesn't exist anymore, you have to go kind of do something else, what would you do? And I guess particularly in the kind of AI lens, like with AI on the landscape, what would you do?
Okay, I thought you would say software doesn't exist anymore or something, because that makes it harder. So I would do, if SaaS.group wouldn't exist, and I would have to start something kind of from scratch, but it can be still in software, I would probably, because that's my other passion, I would do something at the intersection of AI and climate tech. I still, I run a climate tech fund on the side. Mainly my colleagues, because climate tech is an inherently physical thing, not non-software. So we do a lot in food, agriculture, land use, and energy transformation, manufacturing, all topics I know quite little about. But there is a software component also in climate tech with very interesting applications on efficient use of energy, efficient use of food, intelligent ways of circular economy, and AI is needed for a lot of those things, and those things I find very fascinating, because it kind of is the intersection of one thing I know fairly well, which is software, and the other thing, which is I think is the biggest challenge of humanity in the long run. And I would probably do something in that segment.
How? Okay, so I'll answer, because I said it would, but then I want to get into the kind of green energy. I think, if I'm really honest, one thing, because I'm not a developer, I'm not a software guy. So I think that anyone who's listening, which there's probably 2 or 3 listening, who are single non-technical founders, find SaaS challenging because the built-in costs are actually quite high. Like, if I'm not a developer, my first and second hires are developers, and they're expensive. And so you're not really making good money till you get to $50K a month or something. And so I think SaaS is less good of a business than some people because I'm not a developer. I probably wouldn't do SaaS again. I would probably, even, and maybe especially in AI, I would probably run some sort of kind of high-end information business, probably around investing. I think there's a lot you could do with investing and like market analysis and sentiment and modeling to build a quite solid business. You're building products, which is just like software, but similar to you, I think the few things that we will always need is, a nice place to live and climate, right? That makes it hospitable to go outside. And we all need money of some sort. I think the other one would be healthcare and kind of wellness and longevity. But that probably has too many capital hurdles to get through for a kind of mostly bootstrap company. So I wouldn't choose that.
And you would bootstrap
I want to
again?
ask good question. Yeah, so we're kind of mostly bootstrapped. So we joined Tiny Seed, Start Accelerator program. So we gave up some equity for some cash there, and we raised about $750,000 as like a safe note after that. And so I still have kind of 100% board control and the vast majority of ownership. But it is this kind of like half pregnant state that we're in. I would either go 100% bootstrapped, cash flow, slow and steady lifestyle business, or I would go super hard, raise a bunch of money, and not be remote.
Okay.
I think if anyone raising a bunch of money in a remote team is missing the boat. I just think that a bunch of smart people in the same room are more effective than them being at home when you got the dog barking and the, plumber coming over and the kids getting out early at 3:00 from school. I just don't think largely people in a remote environment work as hard. And we're a remote team and I'm fine with that. But if I was like, hey, I have the next $1 billion company, we'd all be in the same room.
Yeah, good point. There is a point to it. On the other side, that's, for example, what I'm seeing with SaaS.group is you get less interactions, but you get a much more diverse set of people in different countries, different views, different everything. Even if they interact less, at least on a personal level, it adds a new level of openness for the world that non-remote teams, so physical teams don't get. And we look at a lot of companies. We've also bought some companies. The companies who have who have physical offices, at least that's what we're here seeing in most of the European countries, is they are much more focused on their own market. So there's like a German team, and we look at their business, and it's like 95% of their revenues are from Germany. While the remote teams, because they hire remotely, they're all over the place. For them also already the world is the market. And so far we've had great success with that mindset, because then, you're international from day one. And it has a lot to do with the mindset. Sure, if you probably get the smartest people in the room who have that mindset from day one, you got the best of two worlds. But reality is that that's less the case.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So we're a team of 9 people. 7 of us speak another language, and most of those fluently. So
you had that from the beginning, but also as a remote setup. And your customers are also from all over the world, I guess.
All over. Yeah. I mean, we follow the typical kind of distribution of podcasting. So call it 70% in North America, continental Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and then it falls off pretty heavy from there. I want to maybe wrap up with kind of hearing the story of Cedo. So you're a founder of Cedo, kind of built it and sold. So folks who have been living under a rock, Cedo is the place to go buy kind of premium domains, right? So if you want, whatever amazing domain, it's already taken. It's probably on Cedo, kind of parked or for sale. And I want to ask because, one of my mentors, Rob Walling, always says hey, don't build a two-sided marketplace, right? Especially don't bootstrap a two-sided marketplace. And you did. Tell me about that. I know it's been a few years, right? But tell me about that journey, and then I have a few questions.
Yeah, sure. That was my first real business. I mean, we had some small predecessor businesses as students, which were sizable for us back then, but not after. So it was my real first business. Started that right out of university, together with 3 friends, and we kind of bootstrapped. We took a little bit of money from a strategic investor, but it was just a couple $100,000. starting point was 2001, so right after the dot-com bubble burst. So not a good climate to raise money. And we were, we were, as you said, we were and still are one of the world's largest marketplaces for domains. Started with a simple idea is to make buying a domain as easy as registering a new name. Knowing that a lot of, like, pretty much all good domains are taken. And that company, I grew that for about 10 years as the CEO, from us four friends to all the way up to about 300 people. And I think in our case, what really helped and was also probably the in a positive way, the turning point is actually that we turned from being only a two-sided marketplace, which is what we're still mostly known to, being a subscription-based business with our domain. You mentioned the domain parking, which essentially means that while you sell a domain, you put some ads on that. And we have an automated system for that. Essentially, those are is some variety of Google ads. And then you collect money for it and also get some traffic stats and everything. And that was kind of the innovation. And today it sounds, of course, trivial, but about 20 years ago, that was actually pre-Google AdWords, I have to say. So the first contract was actually with another provider. That was a real rocket science innovation as much as Google AdWords itself. And that was probably the biggest single change to our trajectory, because we decoupled ourselves from being purely a two-sided marketplace. That business just provided a super steady, super high profitable revenue stream. And of course, also the two things helped each other, because every park name had a much higher likelihood of being sold through us. But also two-sided marketplaces, I think your friend is right there, is hard, because it's a real winner takes all market. And we've acquired also quite a few other marketplaces that struggled over time in our effort to constantly build momentum. Because as a two-sided marketplace, it's not like SaaS, a market where you can have 20, 30, 40, 50 profitable players, but you only have a handful.
I never really thought of that the challenge of a marketplace is that it's a winner take most game. I thought it was more, you have to have both sides. You have to have supply and demand. If you don't have
as well,
then
both.
But that's interesting. Yeah. That's definitely not on my list of, like, if Castos goes away tomorrow, I'm not going to start a marketplace.
No, you have both. You have that supply and demand. That one, actually, we found a cool hack at the beginning. So it was one of those interesting founding stories we set together. We were super young. We were like 22 or something when we had the idea. And we were always doing those web projects for others as a mini agency or student job, essentially coding websites. And so we always ran into this problem with the domain names. And at some point we were like, we need to do this marketplace because all the good names are taken, and let's build a marketplace. What a great idea. And then once we kind of got to research it, it was like, there are actually 20 marketplaces out there already, like greatdomains.com and others. And then after we discovered that, and that was one of our hacks for your question of the two-sided marketplace, was we started by crawling all the marketplaces, scraping them essentially, and becoming a search engine for domains. That's actually also what SEDO stands for. Most people think it stands for sell domain, but it stands for search engine for domain offers. So we said, we're going to cover the supply side by searching. We're going to send over every link, every visitor to those marketplaces while we build our own supply. Essentially, and of course we didn't know that, but it's essentially the playbook how Google kills all their competitors. They scrape everyone for, let's say, e-commerce stores, and then they build their own supply by internalizing that, which is part of the DOJ and other antitrust things at the moment. But it's now a common strategy. Or it has been a common strategy among search engines, is scrape first, build supply later, to exactly avoid what you've been saying, the two-sided marketplace problem.
I had a few follow-up questions, but I'm going to deviate because you said something that piqued my curiosity. which is obviously a lot of companies sell to you. Founders come and they're like, hey, I'm 7 years in. I want to go do something else. AI, I have this great idea over here.
Yeah.
But for me, another option would be, I don't want to sell my business. I just want to hire a CEO and have them run it, and me be chairman of the board, kind of thing. When does that make sense, do you think?
That actually can make sense also to get ready for a sale. Because for us, of course, if the founder is ideally still on board in some capacity and says, oh, I'm going to have this person here, and he or she is ready to take on, is already doing most of the work, but I'm still kind of guiding. That's a compelling thing for a sale, because it ensures that there's someone who is interested in the business and offers continuity. It's better than a founder who says, I'm burned out and I have this new idea and I can't wait to drop everything and leave things with you.
I'm critical to the business, but
I'm
you
critical
don't
to the business.
Anymore.
That's definitely tougher. So it can be a thing. On the other side, it's hard. I mean, I've hired replacements for myself. I've hired replacements in other companies. It's really hard. And like, even with a lot of experience I have, my failure quote is still somewhat high, and it's a hard thing to do. So also, the founders can waste 1, 2, 3 years in finding that right person. I'm generally a fan in this case is to hiring from within, seeing, do you have that one person who is an outstanding individual in your company already, but where you as the founder, you're kind of an invisible glass ceiling to their career, because they're always going to know, is like, oh, founder is going to be CEO. What career path is there? But the second you go, you remove that glass ceiling. And we've seen people who were like the number 2 or number 3 in a company suddenly blossom, and often be better than the original founders, because they're better as managers, they're better team players, and they are the right person to then take the company from 1 to 10, while the founder was the right person to take the company from 0 to 1. Not everywhere. We've also seen failures there, but sometimes we've seen very surprising results.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think this like 0 to 1 versus 1 to 10 is something I think about a lot. I think I consider myself a 0 to 1 person. I still think we're in the 0 to 1, or maybe we're in the 1 to 5, kind of literally, kind of phase. I don't consider the work that needs to be done at Castos to be a scaling thing. Like we still are just in kind of like baseline growth mode. And to me, those are just a little different. Like we're not going to grow to a team of 50 people. Okay. Like we just need whatever the step is before that. So interesting. Yeah. I mean, transparently, I think that's probably the most likely thing that happens with my business is like, do we sell it to someone like SaaS.group? That's not what I would most like, nothing against you, right? I like my business and I want to keep it. I probably just don't want to be the person running it forever. Yeah. And so to me, it seems like a viable option.
It absolutely is. And sometimes it's also a step process. I've seen that myself is like when you hire a CEO, you already remove yourself from the day-to-day operations, and you're less emotional than if you're a CEO, you hire people yourself. And then sometimes 2 years later, I'm like, okay, this is everything is running. I have this new shiny object now. And like you've emotionally distanced yourself from a business, which 2 years ago, you could have not imagined selling. So, or you keep it forever as a dividend. That's fine too. I think there's no right or wrong. Everybody has to do what's right for him or her.
Yeah, for sure. Tim, this is a really great chat. Thank you so much for your time. Really great insights, and I think everybody will have gotten a lot out of this. For folks who want to connect, SaaS.group is kind of where y'all are at on kind of social, or what's the best place for folks to connect?
Yeah, Tim at SaaS.group or LinkedIn, also with that email.
Okay, awesome. Tim, thanks so much.
Thank you.